Picture this for a second. You're setting sail with the absolute pinnacle of technology, a wildly confident crew, and the financial backing of an entire empire. And then you just vanish into the ice without a single trace. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking one of the most chilling, literally and figuratively, mysteries in maritime history. We're talking about the 1845 disappearance of Captain Sir John Franklin's massive British expedition. Right off the bat, we're hit with the million-dollar question. How on earth did two state-of-the-art ships, along with over 100 highly trained men, just vanish into thin air? It's a scenario that completely baffled the world for well over a century. You really have to ask yourself how an expedition bursting with so much promise, setting off to conquer the unforgiving Arctic, could end instead in this deafening, terrifying silence. Section 1. The Grand Departure. Setting sail in 1845. Okay, so what was the actual goal here? They were hunting for the Northwest Passage. If you aren't familiar, this was basically the holy grail of 19th century exploration. It was a highly sought-after, incredibly lucrative western shortcut to Asia right through the treacherous, icy labyrinth of the Arctic. Oh, and as a secondary objective, Franklin's team was supposed to record invaluable magnetic data. But that passage, that was the ultimate prize of geographic discovery. Now, to understand why these guys felt completely invincible, you just have to look at the Victorian tech they brought along. I mean, we're talking about steam engines, heavily reinforced hulls custom-built to literally smash through Arctic ice, heated crew quarters, and get this, 3 years' worth of preserved tinned foods. They even brought a massive library to keep everyone intellectually stimulated. It was like they packed up a piece of London and put it on the water. But as we're going to see, this unbelievable technological prowess actually built a super dangerous, false sense of security against the brutal reality of the Arctic landscape. Section 2. Trapped in the ice. King William Island. Fast forward a bit, and as the months turned into years, that initial electric optimism we talked about, completely gone, replaced by a chilling, desolate reality. The ships didn't just smoothly conquer the passage. Instead, they got tragically ensnared in the unforgiving, icy grip of the Arctic near King William Island. By 1848, things had an absolute breaking point, and the ships were finally abandoned to the white oblivion. Just imagine that abrupt transition, from proud scientific explorers to desperate starving survivors. Under Francis Crozier and James Fitzjames, who took charge after Captain Franklin died, the surviving crew stepped off their high-tech vessels that began a doomed march toward the Canadian mainland, vanishing right into the biting Arctic winds. Section 3. The Grim Discoveries. Relentless Searches. Back in England, the lengthening silence was agonizing. When no word came, relentless search missions were dispatched over the following years. And what they eventually found paints a truly horrifying picture of the crew's final days. Based on preserved remains and personal items pulled from the frozen wasteland, investigators pieced together the suspected causes of their demise. And it wasn't just one single point of failure. It was a horrific combo: severe hypothermia from the merciless cold, sheer starvation, disease, and, this is crazy, the insidious shadow of lead poisoning. That lead was likely leaching right from their cutting-edge tinned provisions or the ship's water systems. Every new piece of evidence just fueled more fascination and absolute dread. Section 4. Chilling Inuit Accounts. Silent Witnesses. But here's the thing. Western science and physical artifacts only told half the story. The Inuit people, native to the Arctic, were the crucial witnesses to this entire tragedy. Their oral histories, passed down for generations, were incredibly specific. They spoke of the Coblonot, that was their term for these foreign European men. The Inuit remembered seeing them as thin and weak, wandering aimlessly on the ice. It's just a haunting image, right? Men driven to the very brink of human endurance, completely stripped of all that Victorian confidence, just trying to survive the unending white expanse. And then comes the truly unthinkable reality. The Inuit accounts bore witness to something that absolutely shook Victorian society to its core. Years later, bone fragments were discovered that perfectly corroborated these indigenous stories. The bones bore undeniable marks of butchery. Yeah, in their agonizing fight for survival, the crew had been forced to resort to cannibalism. For the British public, the idea that respected Royal Navy sailors could be driven to this was literally unimaginable. It completely shattered their lofty notions of inherent civilization. Honestly, this contrast is the core tragedy of the Franklin expedition. Think about it. On one hand, you have peak Victorian hubris, setting out with advanced steamships, extensive libraries, and heated quarters, a literal bubble of 19th century luxury. And then, on the other hand, the desperate reality, starving, wandering aimlessly, and ultimately resorting to cannibalism. It's a brutal, brutal portrait of what happens when immense ambition and arrogance crash headfirst into an unforgiving, alien environment that simply doesn't care about your technology. Section 5. Finding the Lost Wrecks. Frozen in time. For well over a century, the physical ships were totally lost to the icy depths. But looking at the timeline of how this mystery gets resolved in the modern era is awe-inspiring. The Grand Expedition departs in 1845. Just 3 years later, they are hopelessly abandoned. And then an astounding gap of over 160 years passes before the wrecks of the Erebus and Terror are finally discovered in 2014 and 2016. Thanks to modern tech and a renewed push honoring those incredibly accurate Inuit oral histories, we finally found them. Just imagine these massive historic vessels laying hidden as perfectly preserved, frozen time capsules for more than a century and a half, silently holding on to their secrets in the dark. Section 6. A Lasting Legacy. Cautionary Tale. As we wrap up this explainer, we really need to talk about their footprint, because despite the grim ending, this whole story has a fascinating paradox. The numerous search missions sent out to find Franklin's lost men inadvertently ended up mapping the unknown Canadian Arctic. In their desperate, sprawling attempts to find the crew, dozens of rescue ships crisscrossed the ice, slowly reducing the blank spaces on the map. So, in this tragic, ironic twist of fate, the extensive search for Franklin actually achieved his primary goal. It charted the Northwest Passage and marked a massive turning point in modern Arctic navigation. So, I want to leave you with the final provocative thought to chew on. What are the true limits of human endurance? And what sacrifices are we actually willing to make in the relentless quest for discovery? Franklin's men pushed the absolute boundaries of survival, totally driven by that timeless human thirst for knowledge. It's a haunting reminder of our indomitable spirit, but also the sometimes terrifyingly steep price of exploration. Keep that question in mind and never stop being curious about the world around you.